Welcome to Inside Voice, your behind-the-scenes take on the $150 billion home care industry. Here, it's not about the loudest voices or even polished headlines. It's about real stories, real challenges, and real insights from those shaping care every day. Join us as we cut through the noise, explore trends, and uncover what it takes to truly make a difference of the lives of those we care about. Inside Voice. I'm here today with franchisor, CEO, and co-founder of Preferred Care at Home, Frank Guerrieri.
The legendary Frank Guerrieri?
Legendary. No, actually, legendary.
Infamous.
No, famous. Listen, I'm going to ask you a question that all other questions will, hold a candlestick to. Okay?
Oh boy. Okay.
You need to give me something that is jarring about you, something that I like, even maybe I don't know about, that definitely the listeners don't know about, that's unique to you. Are you like into screamo music? Is it did you have long hair at one point? Something. You got to give me something.
Oh boy. You ready for this? I wore platform shoes as a teenager to school.
What is that? I don't know. Platform shoes.
Big heels, like this big. It was like it was a thing back then.
But see that
in the 70s, and I actually wore them, and I cringed just thinking about it.
Are you sure you don't still wear the platform?
I probably need to.
No. Listen, today I love to dive into and kind of just stay on one topic. In the previous time you were on Inside Voice, I think we got a look into just kind of your life story and your journey. I want to lock into what it was like operating a home care agency in the 1980s and the different challenges you faced that we just, I think, take for granted as owner-operators today. So I think it'd be really, really cool to kind of hear what the logistics was like of operating a Preferred Care at Home back in the 1980s.
Sure. Okay.
So I guess the first question for you is, it's 1984. Why home care? What did the senior care industry even look like back then?
Yeah, so 1984, remember, no computers, no pagers, no printers. If there were, they were dot matrix printers. There's that kind of a printer. Home care was not on my radar by any stretch of the imagination. Jody, being a nurse, Jody's mom, a nurse, moved to Florida after we got married in June of 1983. Just a few weeks after the marriage, we moved to Central Florida. And Jody was working at an emergency room. I was selling ambulances internationally. And Jody's mom come up to me and said, I'm tired of working at this hospital. I think I'm going to have people come into my home and care for them there. And the very first person that she put an ad out in what was called the Penny Saver. And the very first person responded and said, "Great house, but I'd rather stay in my house. Can you do it?" And she said, "Sure." And then she came to me and said, "How do we do this?" Essentially, in a Reader's Digest version. And would you be willing to stop what you're doing and join me and partner with me and do something like this? And I said, "Why not?"
Wow.
And so there was nothing to follow. Obviously, home care was
thought of.
Yeah, it was. There was only Medicare really back then,
and Medicaid, probably.
And Medicaid, yeah, need-based care and government-paid care. So the notion that someone could stay in their home and receive care from a company, non-existent. Nor was there a blueprint to follow to accomplish that. So we had to really, from its infancy, develop something that was unique and, if you were to ask me, logical.
Right. Describe to me your first office setup. What was that like? What are some of the essential tools that you had that I would be like, what is this thing?
So the very first office was in Lois's home. She had bought a home, and it was a model home. So the garage had red carpeting from floor to ceiling on one wall, red, bright red.
Heck yeah.
And then they would have
Go well with your platform shoes.
it would have gone well with my platform shoes. So very bright red that you would almost have to wear sunglasses to actually walk in that room. I'm talking like extremely bold. And we threw a desk in there and a couple of chairs, and that was our office in a garage with bright red carpet.
So how did you navigate managing a schedule? Because there wasn't a CMS, there wasn't a WellSky or an Access Care to navigate scheduling and coordinating multiple shifts and ensuring a caregiver checks in. Let's just talk about scheduling for a second.
Sure. So scheduling was, we took paper, drew lines, vertical and horizontal. We listed the clients along the top, the days of the week on the left side. And as our clients would be placed into the top area, and we filled one sheet, we would get another sheet and tape it together. And then we would get another sheet, tape it together until we would have multiple sheets and rows. And then we realized quickly that we can't have flimsy paper just kind of hanging out. So we would be on the hunt for large pieces of cardboard. So Lois would, in her journeys, would look for, on garbage day, big pieces of cardboard. And she would bring home these big sheets of cardboard, and I would cut them out, and we would tape our schedule on these sheets of cardboard.
Huh.
And so we would write the client's name and the days of the week, as I mentioned, on the left, and we would fill in the shifts. And we use more whiteout and red highlighters or red Sharpies than anything else. So every open shift, we would take a red Sharpie and put a line. And when we would fill that shift with the caregiver, we would get the white out, paint over it, and put that caregiver's name in there. And from there, we would invoice and pay the caregivers.
Gosh, it's crazy that you could scale that business.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that whole concept of the visualness of a schedule, one thing I wanted to be able to manage was who was out there, what was still needing to be filled, and how could I visually see that? So you just couldn't leave it blank. And so having a red Sharpie line drew our eyes to what was an open shift.
How did you go about, because I think a big part of our industry is forecasting, projecting. I know I use that tool a lot. Hey, I got this case. Let me run the numbers here real quick. Let me see where we're headed. How did you go about projecting and making the necessary, because listen, you're scaling something, you got to bring in employees, you got to grow. How'd you go about doing that?
Yeah. At the end of each week, just to give you a little visual of this, I would add all the hours of care. And by the way, just give you some conceptual understanding of this. Care was at a cost of $6.95 an hour. That's what the client would pay for care. And so we were running a couple of $1 million business back then. And so you could imagine $6.95, how many hours how many billable hours were, crazy, right? Pretty significant, using a paper system because there weren't computers. There wasn't anything. When Excel came along and there was computers, it was great. We could take an Excel spreadsheet, but the clients...
We're talking about the 80s, baby.
Yeah, right. So we're talking like dinosaur age, right? So at the end of each week, I would do the actual numbers. So we would know our gross for the week and our net for the week by subtracting the two. So that's an indication for everyone out there that knows how important it is for me to know break even and all that. Even back then, I wanted to know on a weekly basis how well we were doing.
Yeah.
And so to project forward, you see, back then it wasn't what we now know is a very common business of senior home care. So our challenges were, how do we educate the consumer, right? How do we educate the moms, the dads, the brothers, the sisters, whoever it is out there, children, the healthcare professionals, that home care was indeed an option.
Yeah.
So I learned early on how do you articulate that in a non-understood industry.
There's no cell phones,
Mm-mm.
but
Yeah.
and I mean, if you think about it, like how do how do you run a senior home care business without cell phones and actually have a normal life where you're with your family? What did it look like when a caregiver didn't show up or a client had an emergency? How did you find out? How were you able to kind of run your business effectively and provide quality of care?
Yeah, I think that it happens in a very similar way, even maybe for many today.
Hmm.
It's that the first you hear from this or from that problem is from the client. Like, Julie didn't show up for work today. And so we had to be very much in tune to strict hours of operation, hardline phones. It was a phone that you had to operate, and after hours, yes, it was Lois. Since the phones were in her house, she was responsible for after hours because if that phone rang, no matter what time, she had to answer it. And thank God for call forwarding. So when call forwarding came around, it was *7 or whatever it is, and then you type in a number. Then when that phone would ring, it would forward to a designated phone. So I would be able to then share after hours support. So call forwarding was new technology. We could move the phone to another line for after hours support.
With all these EVV clock in and apps that are geo-tracked to the client's home address, what did you do to make sure the caregiver showed up at 8 a.m. and then left at, 3 p.m.? How did you ensure that those were accurate?
Yeah, so very interesting what we would do. We would often get a bunch of maps, first off. And I would highlight from the caregiver's home, because we all know how important it is for the caregivers to show up on time. And one of the biggest challenges we have without geo mapping or giving someone using a GPS to get from where they live to the client's home, that in of itself is a challenge, even with GPS. But for us, merely me giving them a turn-by-turn instruction how to go from their house to the client's home, countless times they would get lost. So we would get stacks of maps, and literally we would highlight the journey from their home to the client's house in a highlighter and hand it to the caregiver and say, this is where Mary Jo client lives, and this is how you get there from your home. And they would go to the house. So that's how they would get there. How we prevented the no-show, no-call really was relationships and building that relationships, building that trust with the caregiver, really having a personal interaction with them. We always took on the notion that we had an open door policy. Literally, as we grew and grew into more commercial settings, I would always have an open door into my office, and I always positioned my desk so I could see every single caregiver that walked in to pick up their paycheck. And I would always take the time to meet them, invite them into the office, and spend real quality time with them, not only asking them how they're doing on their job, but how they were doing personally.
Yeah. When you describing all these things that you had to do for mundane tasks and the ability to even scale that to any degree kind of blows my mind. And it makes me wonder, like that famous saying, like an object in motion tends to stay in motion. I wonder if because the technology has taken away so many tasks that you would have to be doing and you'd be so involved with the business that we just get lazy. We become lazy, and we've kind of become we've been able to take a back seat to the business. And we know if you take a back seat in this business, it won't grow. You need to have, whether it be you or C-level executive that you have implored to do so, empowered to do so, it's not going to grow. And so it kind of makes me wonder, like, activity in your business, even if it's, really understanding the schedule and really understanding the maps from the caregiver to the client and really having a strong, because you have to go that second mile. Maybe that's the things that make the business move.
Yeah. I mean, technology has changed the way we did things and we do things and will continue to evolve. But I think you're onto something there, because every week I would have to manually write down the client's name, their address, the phone number, the hours of services that they would want, the caregivers under each of the boxes of the days of the week. And it would often remind me, to call them.
Right.
And then they weren't just a name on a piece of paper. I actually touched that name by writing it down. And I had a real connection each and every week. And oftentimes it would remind me, give them a call to see if more care was needed. Talk about word of mouth referrals. Our business continued to grow way back then because our relationship with our clients were so strong.
Technology is supposed to amplify us to be able to actually have more touch points. But and this wasn't even the intent of this podcast, to be completely honest. But what I'm learning and what that's kind of coming is, I think it's allowed us to become extremely lazy in some of the things that we do, because what do we always say? 90% of your problems are going to come from about 10% of your clients. We have 90% of our business, if we let them, are going to operate on an island.
Yeah.
And back in 1984, that wasn't even an option.
Correct. Yeah, you had to be in the trenches, you had to be hands-on, and you had to engage regularly.
I think we're on this theme. So what do you think is easier, to build relationships and trust with families in the 80s compared to what it is today? Or what do you think it's easier to build the trust today?
So, you've heard me say human nature is unchanged, right? People like to feel valued, feel important, feel that they are your only client. I mean, we all want that personal interaction, that personal hug,
right?
Electronic hug, albeit however we want to call it now. So that part hasn't changed. But the fact that having the ability to connect with the client required one of two ways: literal phone, that someone on the other end had to be in a place where they could answer the phone, or a face-to-face.
Right.
And out of the two, more oftentimes it's getting in the car, driving over, and having that face-to-face interaction that created that long-lasting referral. And I think today, with texting, emails, cell phones, sometimes the face-to-face takes a backseat to all of these other means and methods.
Yeah. Well, again, it's like what is meant for good and constant communication is actually the exact thing that has created the most gap in communication and connection.
Yeah, I think you're right. Even today, when you look at how many emails are in your inbox every day, you wake up.
Well, now half my emails are it's from a real person who used chat to send me the email, and I'm like, this is you, but you didn't write this. So now even emails are not even feeling personal. So I'm like, this is AI. What do they call it? AI slop. I'm just like, okay.
Yeah. We've become desensitized to what we do, sadly.
Right.
Or we can become desensitized. So, the progression wasn't like overnight, all of a sudden we are now electronic.
Well, I think
very gradual.
So what was the hardest technological transition for you to make? And when did you realize, okay, the old way of doing this thing isn't going to cut it anymore?
Yeah. So for some of you may remember the accounting methods. It was a Pegboard system. And Ethan, you probably, what the heck is that? And it was, you'd have a sheet for all of your clients, and it would fit into these holes on a board, and you put it in there, and then you would create the hours of services, and you would by pressing on it, it would have kind of like a copy paper, and it would create
like
a check, essentially a double copy check. And our Pegboard system was our accounting system. And we would create invoices by hand, write them down, fold them, put them in an envelope, put a stamp on it, mail it every week. Same way, write checks in this Pegboard system based on these invoices by hand every week. And it was extremely manual. But you know what? There were far and few mistakes because you had you had clear, undeniable schedule because you wrote it down
Right.
and you confirmed it and you wrote it down again. And so very, very manual. And the transition from that into the computer age was like, what on earth is this?
Yeah. I mean, there's like this sense of, you probably even felt it. Nothing's new under the sun, right? We're dealing in an age of rapid growth through AI. It's probably as similar as like, is there still going to be a niche for an agency, right? When a computer came out,
Yeah.
and that hasn't changed, and now we're seeing again a rapid growth through AI, and I think it kind of leads. Technology has changed everything about how we work, but it stayed exactly the same regarding on why we care for seniors.
Yeah. The need for care unchanged. Who delivers the care it's albeit now unchanged. What is AI going to do? But the personal touch, the mere touch of a person on their arm, the guidance, the warm connection, the understanding, the empathetic approach to care, understanding that personal side of care. I don't think that'll ever change. We all desire that. We all long for that. We all want that. We don't want a robotic approach to what we deliver. That's why home is a person's first choice to live out their days.
All right, last question for you. What does a 1984 perspective offer a home care owner starting out today in a world dominated by software?
Well, the perspective of 1984 to today, it allows us to spend more time in the home, not less, today.
But what do you think it's done?
On the positive, I think on the positive side, it allows us to streamline the mundane, but not at the expense of quality client and caregiver interaction. You want to grow your agency, you want to grow your home care company, you want to have more client referrals, spend time in the home with them. As we did in 1984 and through the decades after that, quality interaction with both the client and the caregiver produced greatly for us. Technology should never replace that, but should allow more of that.
Yeah. And I think I just think from this, the idea of having to be so hands-on, it required you to connect with your clients and caregivers. And I think if we're not careful in today's world, we can operate an efficient, profitable, growing home care agency, but still be extremely disconnected from the heart of care, but in particularly our caregivers and our clients. I think if that's the software being improperly used. That's in a word, you're using it right, but the usage of it is to free you up
to do other things
for even more human connection.
100%. We looked at the progression of hardline phones, pagers, all the way to mobile phones. Some in the size of a bag that you would carry around with you, to those that you would hook on your belt, to freeing you to having smart devices to manage your business in the palm of your hand. All should not be to replace your interaction with those that are important to your business, but to enhance it.
Yeah, love it. Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for coming on Inside Voice a second time.
Yes. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, hitting that like button really helps the channel grow. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a drop. We're here every other Wednesday at 8 a.m. sharp. See you in the next one. Inside Voice.